Hello everyone, I am Sahil from CodeHelp. Welcome to JavaScript Hoisting tutorial. Before jumping to the code, let's take a look at what we will be covering in this video. So in this video we will be covering what is hoisting, which will give you an idea of the concept of what hoisting in JavaScript actually means. After that we will deep dive into the logic that how variable and function hoisting actually works and see what happens behind the scenes. Also, I'll explain you how to understand tricky parts in hoisting because of which most of the people get confused. Then we will move on to few examples which are usually asked in interviews. So if you are preparing for an interview, watch that very closely. There, I'll demonstrate via code the example of function and variable hoisting. Lastly, I'll summarize the logic and will give you a few tips to tackle hoisting questions smoothly in the interview. So let's get started. To get an idea of what hoisting is, let's have a look at the code. Here I have a variable a and a method getAb, and at the bottom I am trying to log the variable a and I am calling the method getAb. Now let's see what would be the output if I try to get the value of this method. So as we can see, the value of a is printed as 10 and b is equal to inside function, which is as we expected. Now coming to hoisting, let's say I move these two statements on top of the function and I try to get the value of these two from there. Now I have taken the two statements to the top of the program and now I'll try to print the value of these. As I'm trying to access the variable and functions here before even declaring them in my program, so what should be the output? Will it print anything or give me an error? Let's take a look. Though in most of the programming languages, it will certainly give you an error, but let's check what happens in JavaScript. Let me save the file. So to our surprise, magically JavaScript gives the output as shown. A is coming as undefined and B is same as we have seen in our previous example. Though the value of A is coming as undefined, but this makes one thing clear, that memory has been allocated to A, and JavaScript is aware that A exists in its memory context. Now, how can I say that JavaScript knows that this parameter exists? That I'll cover in a while. So hoisting is basically moving all the declarations of functions and variables in a program on top at the time of program execution. So that's why as soon as JavaScript will compile, the compiler will identify all the declarations done in the program and will move them on top, thus making them available in our case. Okay, now let's do one more interesting stuff. Let's try to get log of the function. Now remember one thing, I'm just trying to get the log of the function and I'm not calling the function. Let's check what happens. So as I can see, it returned me the entire function body. That's strange, right? At least for now you will feel it's strange and not a concrete behavior by JavaScript. But I promise you by the end of this video, you will be absolutely clear why this is happening. Now let's understand what happens behind the scenes and how JavaScript behaves the way we saw. For this, we need to understand how the memory is allocated to all the variables and the functions in JavaScript. To see that, let's move to the source tab, and in the source tab, let's keep an eye on the scope tab again, which you can find here. Now coming back to the Visual Studio, let's move the code as it was in the beginning. Now in the sources tab, let me open index.js. If it is not open, you can open it either by Ctrl P or selecting it from the drop down in the left hand side. I'll put a breakpoint at line number 4 and let me execute the program by reloading it. Now let me reload the method and our execution flow has stopped at the breakpoint. Now coming to this scope tab, let me check. Now just remember one thing, the program is not yet executed even the first line. It is before this first line var a. So let me check in the global context whether we have the functions and variable available. So looking at the first member, I can see a which means that has been allocated to A, but the value is coming to be undefined. Similarly, let's check for the method. Coming down, let's look for get AB. So see, I can see that get AB has been allocated memory here. But now check what is the value of this get AB. The value of get AB is the entire function definition. See, as I hover it, you can see. Now, this means that JavaScript allocates the memory to functions and variables before even the execution of the program begins. Now, coming to the variable A, so which is coming as undefined, as I already told you that JavaScript is aware that A is available in its global context, but it is coming as undefined as the execution is not yet started and the line where A is equal to 10 has not yet been executed. So now to understand the difference between undefined and not defined, let's try to print this on top and let me remove the breakpoint and going back to the console. So now A is coming as undefined. Now let's say what happens if I remove this variable A entirely from our program. Now let me just save it. So now here we are getting A is not defined. Are you seeing the difference between undefined and not defined? So undefined is basically the variable has been allocated the memory, but it has not yet been initialized. But in case if it is not defined, this means that the variable is not yet allocated any memory. Now we can verify that going back to our scope tab and putting a breakpoint at line number 2 and reloading our page. Now if we'll try to look for A, see, we don't have any variable A currently, which means no memory has been allocated to it in the global context. So I hope the difference between undefined and not defined is clear to you guys. Now let's move on and take few more examples. Now as you all must be knowing that we can define a function by this way as well. Now I have created a function by a different way, which is like we initialize a variable. So I have taken a variable and I initialized it to the function definition. Now let's try to access this variable on top and let's see what happens. Before I save it, you guys take a second and think like what should be the output. You can pause the video and think. Now I'm saving it. Let's see what happens. Strange, right? Like get tab 2. I'm trying to log the function body, but get tab 2 is coming as undefined, but get tab, the entire function body, is available, though both of the method definitions are below their logging place. But get AB is available, but get AB2 is coming as undefined. So why is this happening? Let me just show it to you why this happened. Now moving back to the sources tab, and there let's put a breakpoint and keep an eye on the global context. Let me reload the program. Now if you will see, we have a method getAB and a method initialized as a variable getAB2. Now as we saw in our previous case, when we are trying to initialize a variable, though it is allocated memory, but it stays as undefined. In the global context, if we check the value of A, it is coming as undefined. Now let's check the value of getAB. Similarly, we will check the value of getAB2. So getAB, as you can see, we can see that it has the entire function body against it. But for getAB2, as it is initialized as a variable, the value is still undefined, which you can verify by hovering over it as well. So that's why when we go back to the console, we get the value of getAB as a function body, but getAB2 is coming as undefined. So I hope this is clear to all of you that a variable is not yet initialized until its initialization statement executes, but a function is given memory and its body is stored against it even before the program is executed. Now next time when someone asks you what hoisting is, then don't give a bookish language answer to him and try to explain how the global context and the execution in a JavaScript program works, and why memory is allocated to the variables. Now, next time when someone asks you what is hoisting, then instead of giving a bookish language, tell him how it actually works behind the scenes about the global context and how memory is allocated to variables and functions, which makes JavaScript behave the way it does. If this video helped you, then please like it and subscribe to my channel. Thank you and see you in the next lecture, guys.